The other day, Jimmy Carter said an overwhelming portion of the intensely demonstrated animosity toward President Barack Obama is based on the fact that he's a black man. Now, we know the president's approval rating is down. Is that because of the job he's doing in the minds of the public or because of his color? Joining us is contributor Cameron Turner from Turner's 2 Cents. Hi, Cameron.
Hey, Fred, how are you?
Good, thank you. White House disagrees with Carter's assertion. Is Carter right or wrong?
Unfortunately for the nation, President Carter is correct. He wasn't talking about the approval ratings. Think about the language that President Carter used. This intense animosity is reflective of some racist attitudes in this country. And I think it's actually pretty obvious. And it goes back to the campaign. Let's think about to when those Curious George T-shirts were floating around, and when Sarah Palin was going around saying that, oh, well, Barack Obama is not one of us. He's not one of us small-town Americans. This coded language, which does touch some racist attitudes.
Cameron.
This conservative march that was just held in Washington.
Cameron, with all due respect, a bit of a stretch there. A little bit of a stretch, Cameron? A little bit of a stretch on that?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'll explain how come. When you stand up, in front of a group of white constituents and talk about how the black candidate is not one of us, that's language that goes back generations. It's coded.
Cameron.
And more specific example. Representative Lynn Jenkins, freshman congresswoman in Kansas. She stood up at a GOP fundraiser and talked about how the Republican Party is looking for the Great White Hope. When she was reprimanded, she claimed, I didn't know Great White Hope had racist connotations. Of course it does, and of course she knows it. What do we say also about the presence of Confederate flags at that march? What do we say about this continued questioning about President Obama's origin?
But wait a minute, Cameron, George Bush faced those types of questions when he was president, not his origin. But
no one accused George Bush of being no one accused George Bush of not being an American.
Yeah, but he certainly.
No one accused George Bush of being foreign-born and sympathetic to terrorists.
But
no one said that he was a Muslim. I mean, things are being said about Obama that have been disproven over.
But that's what they can talk about in this situation. George Bush was criticized in many regards. And you know that,
Cameron.
That's
what you say when you're trying to rile folks up against somebody on racial terms. Douglas McKinnon, who we remember was the press secretary to Bob Dole, he chided the Republican leadership for not speaking out against racist actions. The specific examples he used involved the Election Commission chairperson down in South Carolina who made that statement when the gorilla escaped from the zoo. And he said, that's just one of Michelle's relatives. And then, of course, there was the executive assistant.
That was wrong.
There was the executive assistant to the Tennessee state senator who sent out that picture. You know those commemorative photos that have all the portraits of all the presidents, and Obama's depicted as just a black square with a couple of white eyes. Now, Douglas McKinnon said, why didn't the Republican leadership denounce this? The point is, there's a lot of irresponsible race baiting going on, and the Republican leaders are not speaking out. They are not saying that it's wrong. They're allowing it to go on, and there is a lot of subtle and not very subtle appeal to racist anger and racist fear. And I do believe that President Carter was correct when he said this intense animosity, not just the disagreement about policy, but when you stand up and say that man is not an American, he is not one of us, and then you attach it to all this other stuff, I think it's obvious that there's racial vindictiveness and vitriol being hurled at the president.
All right, because we're almost out of time, so let me wrap it up with this if I can. But is it safe to say, and I understand what you're saying, but is it safe to say at this point in time, with the president's approval rating down, that is based on his performance in the minds of people at this time? And not his race. What about that?
Well, I don't think Mr. Carter said anything about his approval ratings. Mr. Obama's approval ratings plummeted when he did not vehemently stand up for his health care and other proposals. Those ratings are going to start turning around. He's been out there explaining his side of things, and we're going to see the numbers change because the majority of Americans do not have these racist attitudes. And there's a group of folks who are angry and scared and who continue, as I say, this whole birther thing was just coded racism. And there are those folks out there trying to put fear in the minds of America because they don't like the idea of a black man being in the White House. Now, there are people who disagree politically. That's not who Jimmy Carter was talking about.
All right. Cameron, nice job tonight. I really appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak, Fred. Thank you very much.
I will talk to you next week. Thanks.